Well, we're talking about social media. I often see the same handful of people on social media in learning and development, and it seems like it hasn't quite reached the breadth of people that could be involved in social media. And as we're talking about content curation and building personal learning networks and things like that, social media seems like a fairly simple and intuitive avenue to build those networks and to share knowledge. Why do you think sometimes L&D professionals are a bit fearful of getting involved in learning and in the social media space?
Because you're exposing yourself. And you know, the first time, if you can remember, the first time you send a tweet, you're sending something out to potentially millions, billions of people. Probably not if it's your first one. But there's a real sense of exposure and vulnerability, and you're putting yourself on the line, and therefore it's easier not to do it and say, oh, I don't tweet, you know, I don't do that kind of thing. And it worries me a lot when organizations seem to embrace that and say it's fine. Whereas, you know, if you're running L&D and you haven't got a list of really great Twitter handles of people in L&D all over the world who will put in front of you ideas, resources, research, they will summarize it for you, they'll do all the work for you. If you're not regularly trawling that, then you're not just missing a trick, you're kind of missing a big chunk of what your professional life should be. So you don't even have to be a particularly great participant to be a recipient. And you can get those lists are in there. You just search Twitter and just attach to a list and you'll get all of that data. And you know, I found a piece of software called Nuzzle recently. And Nuzzle goes through all of your Twitter followers and all of the things that they've posted, and where it's been retweeted twice or three times, it then packages it for you. So I get maybe 4 or 5 Nuzzle emails, which simply summarizes the popular stuff or the stuff that seems to be important in my network. Now, it's free and it's brilliant. And I miss, obviously Twitter is just this endless flow. You miss 98% of it. But Nuzzle just helps me to capture a little bit more of what I would normally miss, or most of which I would miss, maybe not everything. So there are apps which will help you work with apps. You just need to step into it to realize just how important it is. You know, you could take lots away from me, but please never take my Twitter feed away. Twitter is it's not my life. I think that does sound very sad, but Twitter is my massive network and my connection with the world and my way of keeping in touch. So it's very important to me, and I can't believe that you can be a contemporary L&D leader and be in isolation. How do you find stuff out?
Exactly.
It's really hard.
Now, a lot of businesses are looking to social collaborative learning as a way of curating and collecting knowledge and managing that.
Yes.
But often they're struggling to find a way of proving that it works, or you know, to measuring the actual impact of that. Have you found a way of making something meaningful of that social collaborative learning, and what are easy ways that people could do that?
Yes, 70-20-10 is indisputable. Forget about 70-20-10. But Charles Jennings has recently renamed the 70 component learning as work. So it's just the way we work a little bit more out loud, a little bit more self-consciously. We as leaders or as managers, we encourage a bit of learning in the work process, all of that stuff. It's really valuable. How do you measure the impact? It's difficult, and if you want kind of hard metrics, then it's much more difficult than if you put someone in a room and work with them for 3 hours and then test them at the end of it. But you can do it, and you can do it by asking people what's different around here. If you ask people, how is your job? Is your job easier or more difficult? What has changed in your job? How are you doing things today that you're differently and more effectively than you were doing them yesterday? And you'll get data, and in that will be embedded some of the consequence of social and collaborative learning. But if you try and clean it and make it pure and say it was definitely this was exactly the amount, I would forget that. It's messy data, but it's still, data about how an organisation is changing for the better, how knowledge is being moved around, how people are solving problems much faster, and just basically learning continuously. And if you want pure facts and figures, they're more likely to be difficult to obtain. But if you want an indication of the organisation changing, in some way that is more valuable data, I think, more valuable at the end of the day. So you can get it. You just have to talk to people.